Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video for you guys. And today's video, I'm going to be going over and ranking all of the infielders I think you guys should be using in a competitive environment, in ranked, stuff like that, going into kind of this midpoint of season 2. So real quick, the elephant in the room is we are getting team affinity very soon from the time after this video is posted. So a lot of this will probably be outdated relatively soon. But I'll probably do a new content kind of tier list when that comes out, and then we'll hopefully get to our top 50 early next week, something like that. So sounds good. Hopefully, if you guys do enjoy the content, I would urge you to like and subscribe. And yeah, let's get into it. So this Toro card, very outdated, was like decent when the season first came out, probably like a D tier card now. At this point in the season, I don't feel like you really want cards that just have a ton of contact or a ton of power. You kind of need that well-rounded card. He's also pretty bad on defense. But you factor in things like the Devers boost and stuff like that. Obviously moves up, but we don't really do boosts around here because not everybody's gonna run the same boosts on the same cards all the time. This Captain Adam Dunn, I assume most people that are using this card probably have him parallel 4 or 5 at this point. You can see very respectable hitting stats. Obviously lefty's gonna suck with him, but it's the same with everybody. I think he's probably B, potentially A. It just kind of depends on how the rest of the first basemen on this list kind of go. Like, I feel like he's in a pretty similar spot to a card like Adam Duvall, who probably has better power against one side, but the contacts are lower in general. I think they're comparable. Just kind of depends on whose swing you like more. I think Duvall probably goes down, to be honest. Aledmys Diaz, love him as a player, but in-game, just never a great card. Does not have great defense on this card. He's a contact-hitting shortstop that doesn't have really any power. I'd probably stay clear of that card. Bregman, very solid option at third or second. Also has shortstop. Probably wouldn't play him at shortstop, but third or second, super solid. 104, 93, 81, 93 power right with maxed out clutch, always nice. And he is a decent fielder. I think that's kind of good enough for A tier. Soriano, new World Series award, obviously S tier. The swing, love it or hate it, always kind of, not the greatest swing. Everybody can agree on that. That's not the greatest swing. A lot of people absolutely hate it, myself included. But 101 left, 109 right, 100 left, 96 right with 109 clutch. He's fairly fast and is I'd say plus defensive second baseman at this point in the season. So super nice card, just not a ton of competition at second base. Santander, definitely dated at this point. Kind of goes with Toro, where like if you need that switch option, he's going to be one of your better options just because there aren't that many others to fill that gap right now. But in general, not my favorite card in the world. Austin Riley, super solid option. I don't think he's, awesome. Plays third and first. You can see 98 contact left, 91 right, 101 left, 94 right, 92 clutch. So kind of in a similar fashion to where his live series was earlier in the year. I'm not the biggest fan of his swing in general. I think I would personally prefer to have Bregman over him, but that's just kind of, where I'm thinking right now. Babe, obviously S tier, probably, going to be the first or second best first baseman that we get for the entire year. So, nothing more to say on him. Brandon Lau, more of like an all-star card. You still could run him at second base just because his swing is so butter. But I believe he has like 71 contact against lefties. Just not going to get the job done at this point. You can argue maybe you would want to platoon him, but even then, he's like a defensive liability. Really no spot for him in the current meta of the game. Dozier, A tier. He's fine as a second baseman. Not my favorite swing in the world. He's just kind of a guy that does a little too much at the plate. But 108 contact left, 90 contact right, 125 power left, and 84 power right. with 96 clutch. So hitting wise, super good. Defensively, actually really solid. So not a bad card, and he gives you kind of elite power at second base that you probably wouldn't see until the very end of this season otherwise. But you just can't hit righties that well. He absolutely mashes against lefties, can't really hit righties too great. And when you have a card like Soriano that kind of does everything, it kind of offsets him. This Harper, C, the stats aren't that great. Really, if you're using Harper, it's for this number right here, the 120 clutch, and the just swing, right? If you're using a Harper card, it's probably because you really like his swing. Usually has some pretty decent quirks also. Live Series Harper, basically the same card, except you have the added benefit of maybe catching him on a day where he's up on inside edge. So they are very similar. Just kind of depends on if the live series is playing up or down, I guess, as to which version of Bryce you would really want to use. Correa, feel like I say it every time I see him. S tier, just because the swing. I know his power is kind of lackluster against righties, I want to say. Yeah, so against righties, only 72 power. But awesome clutch, awesome contact, awesome power left. Very good defensively, other than the speed. The speed's a little bit of a red flag, but when you're 6'2", it kind of, or 6'4", it kind of makes up for it. I always say it, if you like that Cal Ripken Jr. archetype of shortstops, those tall, more contact focused shortstops, then Carlos Correa will probably be one of your better options all year. Especially when you add on top of that the swing they gave him this year. He has a very good swing this year. So I'm a big fan of that card. 95 chipper, honestly S tier. Like, honestly, this card's S tier. When you compare him to the 99 chipper, obviously he's not all too great. But at this point of the season, 117 contact left, 96 against righties, 115 power left, 92 against righties with 92 clutch. Is a little bit of a subpar fielder, but you don't use Chipper Jones for the fielding, right? You use him for that insane bat, the insane switch hitting ability that he brings to a team. And he's obviously S tier. And then we have the 99 Chipper, who's up there with Babe for one of the best cards that we'll probably get all year. Also has left field secondary, but obviously this is an infield list. But it's worth mentioning. It's absolutely stacked. Basically a perfect hitter other than like his power against lefties. And then not even bad on defense. 78 reaction, gold shield, 70 speed. Very, very playable at third base. 91 Chipper Jones, a little bit of a different story. This is like a pure platoon player. You can make it work just because the fact he's a switch hitter. But when you look at him, 76 contact left, not really, borderline unusable. If you're on something like Hall of Fame or Legend, you're going to have to think twice about using this card at this point of the season. 115 contact right, 60 power left is pitiful. I think Trey Turner has more power than that. 93 power right, and then 90 clutch. So very solid card, and he's fine to use. And with the quirks that he has, it is Chipper Jones. He has like every hitting quirk in the game. With the quirks he has and him being a switch hitter, still a very usable card, and a lot of people will probably hit fine with this card regardless. But he's just not really up there with that top tier of third baseman. Morel, I still really like him. I think he brings some unique stuff that people at his position don't usually have. Whether you play him at second, short, or third, just insane power, very good swing. So 84 contact left, 90 contact right, 103 left, 107 right with 100 clutch. Not the best fielder in the world, but does have an absolute cannon. So I love Morel. I think when we get our new content drop, he might easily go down and not age that well. But as of right now, I think he's still a super usable card. Dan's boy, no real reason to be using him at this point. I think he's D tier. You would have to really like his swing or be running like a Braves theme team to really be using this card at this point. The contacts are still in a really good spot, and the defense isn't bad. That 68 arm at shortstop is, a little suspect. But really it's the power, the speed, the fact that there's just guys that do it better than him at his position, but he is still very solid and not a terrible card. I think he's Probably C tier. C tier is where I'm starting to think of using some of these guys. D tier is guys I'd probably be off of at this point. Dalton Varsho, I think his stats are solid. I don't know why you would use him over, other catching options that we have, but 87, 88, 66 power left, 90 power right, 103 clutch. So just super mid. Definitely a usable card. You can win games with Dalton Varsho at catcher. I'm not gonna say you can't, but not my favorite card personally. Elias Diaz, this card's fine. He's not great. I assume he'll be over Varsho. I haven't really looked at his stats a ton. 75 contact left, 113 right, 81 power left, 92 power right, 115 clutch, and not a good fielder at catcher either. So I think he drops in the C tier also. I'd almost rather use Dalton Varsho than him. Not my favorite card in the world. Tatis, definitely kind of his time's kind of passed him up. Still an insane hitter against lefties, but against righties, he's just kind of mid at this point. 83 contact right, 82 power right. The clutch is still decent. Defensively, he's still kind of bad. The speed kind of helps to make up for his not great fielding and reaction, but just not the card he was, which is kind of to be expected because, he came out basically the first day of the season. He's at 89 overall. He shouldn't really be competing with a lot of these 95s. But a 95 he does compete with is Lindor. So this card's solid. I'm not going to sit here and say he sucks because at the end of the day, it is Lindor, and Lindor always plays better than his stats, always has one of the best swings in the game. He's also a switch hitter. But when you look at his stats against righties, 75 is pretty miserable. And then doesn't really have super high clutch to carry that either. Great defensively as a shortstop, but then arm strength, which is probably the second most important stat, is not super great. And he's not really fast either. And the fact that this card's a chase card and is ridiculously overpriced as a result of that, just B tier. He's fine. He's not great. It's far from one of the better shortstops that we have in the season right now. I'm definitely taking guys like, maybe even Bregman at shortstop, but definitely taking a card like Correa at short over him. And I think we'll have a couple other options on this list that I would definitely prefer over him. This EO card is fine. I believe his power against one side is not great. Yeah, so 116 left, 99 right, 93 power left, 79 power right with 98 clutch. Super solid card. I don't know how this card's only a 90 overall when you look at that Lindor card and somehow he's a 95. But this is a solid card. I won't knock anybody for running him. I think he's very decent. Giambi, maybe A tier. I'm going to need a refresher on his contacts. So as you can see, 90 left, 97 right, 105 against both sides, and then 107 clutch. Obviously a poor fielder, but that's Jason Giambi for you. He always tears me up in the show. He's always a card that when my opponent's using him, he's phenomenal. And then I don't really hit that great with him. But I think he's fine. I think he's kind of run of the mill for first baseman. You can find first basemen that are better than him. There's definitely some that are worse than him. I think he's fine at first base. Very similar to like the Adam Dunn card. Javi, I'm thinking B tier. I like his swing. The past 2 years, I've kind of enjoyed his swing a little bit. It's kind of like one of my guilty pleasure swings. 92 contact left, 83 against righties, so not great. 115 power left, 110 power right. Absolutely elite for a shortstop. 85 clutch, and then pretty solid at defensively as a fielder. 77 reaction, gold shield, good arm strength, good speed. Is a second baseman, so if you are going to run him at shortstop, you might want to get some parallels on him, or you might just have to bite the bullet and know that he's a little bit worse there than some other options. But I don't see any reason he can't be just as good as Lindor for a lot of people. Jeremy Pena, I think he slots in this A tier. I'd probably prefer Correa over him. I've never really liked Pena cards, but stats wise, this card gives Correa a run for his money. I think I still like Correa a little more, but 102 left, 90 right, 102 left, 93 right with 96 clutch, and it's Pena. So he's a very solid fielder with really, really good speed, which obviously helps out the defense. I think he is in the running for one of the better shortstops you can have right now, pre-Jeter. So it's just kind of personal preference. But for me, I think Correa's swing definitely puts him over him. This Jock card, I'm going to have to look at a little bit more. So 78 left, that's really tough. 88 right, 123 power against both sides, 105 clutch. So if you are on the All-Star, or if you can somehow assure that he will always have a runner on base when he comes up, this card's phenomenal. Otherwise, if you're on Hall of Fame or if you're on Legend, he better be facing a righty, because otherwise he's going to struggle. I think he's fine. Maybe potentially one of the best bench bats you can have in the game right now. But I don't know if I would be starting him, especially if you're on a higher difficulty. Joe Morgan, was one of the better cards when the season first started, kind of aged like milk. 95 contact left, 86 contact right, 70-70 basically power-wise, 90 clutch. Not the greatest fielder in the world, and he is really short, so that's not really helping his defense out too much. So that's tough. I think he's fine. If you still want to, run him, the C tier is kind of, you can win games with these guys. Not my first choice options, but you can definitely win games with a guy like that. Gallo, stats-wise, very similar to Jock Peterson. The one thing I will say about Gallo is I think your lefty-lefty at-bats with him are going to be a lot rougher. Historically, Gallo kind of struggles to turn lefty-lefty on anything inside. So I think he's going to get absolutely worked by lefties. Jock definitely has a better swing, in my opinion, than a guy like Joey Gallo does. But you can never underestimate Joey Gallo in MLB The Show. There's a reason he has the reputation he does. Jonathan India, I think he's a fine option at second base. Gives you more of a contact-focused kind of second baseman. If you, if you struggle in Hall of Fame or if you're on Legend at this point, this might be a better option for you than a guy like Dozier. 114 left, 107 right, 73 power left. Kind of, but if you play at high elevation parks, doesn't matter a ton. 88 power right, 112 clutch. Not a bad fielder by any means, and he is kind of tall, so he might get some super dives from time to time. Polanco, easy S tier. Honestly, this card is so bad on defense, he might be better off as a DH, but 100 contact left, 118 right, 80 power left, 86 power right, max out clutch, and he is an absolutely horrendous fielder. So if you run him at second, just do so knowing he's going to make the occasional error for you. He is by no means a gold glover, much less a platinum glover. More so of a DH card than anything. But the bat is just so good for him. And he's always going to be a threat as long as he's in the lineup. J-Ram, I think I got to put him top of B tier. He's just really bad contact-wise against righties, actually. So 103 left, 61 right, 86 left, 87 right with 105 clutch. And not really a bad fielder. You can run him at second, you can run him at third. But if you can get him on a day where his inside edge is like plus 10 against righties, probably bumps him up a tier. Obviously, being a switch hitter is a very good weapon. And like I said in my previous video, if you are on All-Star, this card's going to be a god for you. If you're on a higher difficulty, you may want to look into platooning him, or maybe you start somebody that hits righties really well, and then if it is a lefty pitcher, you sub in J-Ram, and then you just kind of eat those at-bats later in the game because you'll have the handedness advantage. But he's an absolute dog, and I think he's a steal for what he is. Schwarber, I'm thinking like top 8 here. I'm not sure exactly where he fits into preferred first baseman. 81 contact left, so that's gonna suck when you're on Hall of Fame, or if you're on Legend and somebody has like an outlier fastball with like a good slider. It's gonna make some really hard at bats for you. But 102 right, 118 left, 125 right power wise. and then 100 clutch. And we know what his swing is. He always has a really good swing. So I think the contact against lefties keeps him out of that S tier. When you compare him to like a guy like Babe at first base, he obviously doesn't stack up to him. So I think that keeps him in A. This Seager, I think he's just kind of B. He's just kind of bleh. I'd say there's multiple third basemen better than him. 88 left, 102 right, 81 left, 96 right, 92 clutch, and a decent fielder. This is a better Kyle Seager. I think he fits into the meta better than that 97 from last season that when everybody got him, they had way better cards to use. He's at least viable, and you might see him if you queue up enough ranked games, but he's not going to be a super common sight. Manny, I think he also gets into B tier. Very mediocre hitting stats, as I would describe him. 88, 86, 183 with 97 clutch. But if you're using Manny, it's for one of two reasons. You either love his defense. He was my best defensive first/third baseman I used all of last year. Or you love his swing. I love his swing. There's not really any other swings like it in the game, in my opinion. It's kind of a weird, like, corkscrew, kind of like KBO type swing. Absolutely love Manny. He does wonders with the bat, and always kind of plays above his stats, but I don't think he's comparing to some of these guys in A tier. Mark McGwire, I think A tier. If you can look past his swing, which a lot of people don't have problems with this swing. Me personally, I don't love it, but 90 left, 84 right, 115 against both sides power wise, 90 clutch. So I would drop him. He is kind of similar to a guy like Schwarber, so we'll kind of see how the rest of these first basemen kind of pan out, and maybe we'll adjust after that. Matt McLean, big fan of him just because he always plays a million positions. This card doesn't have like outfield like some of his cards in the past have, if I remember right, but always kind of a super utility guy. 110 left, 91 right, 95 left, 71 right with the 105 clutch and really good fielding at every position, and he's pretty fast. So definitely a slept on card, can kind of fit in your lineup anywhere you need him to. Not a bad card by any means. This Muncie card boosts other like seasonal war guys, but really bad contact. So really bad contact left with 67, 90 against righties, 106 left, 117 against righties, 71 clutch. So the low clutch kind of kills this card. I think his captain boost might add clutch if I remember right, but it's not going to make up for that big of a gap. This card's C tier. He's not great. On All-Star, he's going to play like an S tier card, obviously, because he has crazy power. His swing is always so good every single year. One of my favorite lefty swings in the game every single year. But on Hall of Fame, he's really going to struggle lefty-lefty, and on Legend, fat chance. It's going to be tough to hit lefty-lefty on Legend with him, especially probably with the next batch of pitchers we get. We'll see kind of a bump in hits, probably between like 100 and like 110 for a lot of pitchers. He's going to struggle a lot. Mike P, always an S tier option. I mean, this card is comparable to the catchers we get when cards are 99s. How they weighted this card's overall is absolutely, it boggles the mind that this card's a 90. 110 left, 109 right, 79 left is the biggest flaw with this card. 89 power right, 114 clutch, and obviously not a great fielder, but doesn't really matter. And he has basically every hitting quirk that you would want. So he's an absolute stud. Yeah, the swing is a little suspect, and it might take some getting used to, but this is honestly, other than Babe Ruth, Yachts is probably the best value card for doing the live series collection. Mookie, I want to so bad. This is my boy. I absolutely love Mookie. But I don't think he's S tier. Maybe he's A tier. I'm going to need a refresher on his stats real quick. 103 left, 93 right, 65 left, 76 right, 117 clutch. And obviously a relatively good fielder at shortstop other than the height and the speed. Maybe as a shortstop, he's not A tier. You can go back and forth and kind of argue whatever you want. In between like him and Pena, or like him and Morel, or him and Bregman. But as a second baseman, right? You're not getting too much more value than that out of a second baseman. I think after last roster update, you kind of really notice his power. Before that roster update, I did not notice any power drop off in the card, even though he got some power taken off then. Now it's pretty noticeable. You line out a good amount with him. He flies out to the wall a good amount. But at the end of the day, it's still Mookie Betts, still has a great swing, still has a lot of good quirks. And he still hits some home runs he probably shouldn't. Arenado, S tier. If you use the captain card, you know how good his swing is. His swing is unreal this year. Probably my favorite year of using Nolan Arenado. That being said, stat wise, kind of mediocre, if not subpar, for a 97. Most of his overall is carried by the defense and the fact that he absolutely launches balls into orbits against lefties. Which, if our best pitchers were Randy Johnson and John Donaldson, that would be awesome. But they're not really. It's more of a mix with starting pitching this season. So you're not guaranteed to face a lefty every single game. If this card came out last season, oh boy, he would have been in everybody's lineup. But he is still a really good card with a really good swing. The 125 clutch is really nice. A lot of people use that captain card, and that captain card had like 60 power against one side, if I remember right, or it was like 70 or something like that. So I can only imagine how good this card is going to be. Should be a staple in everybody's lineups, provided we don't get some absolutely insane cards on that Friday drop. Nolan Gorman, probably A tier for what he gives you at second base. Basically, just an upgraded Brandon Lau, to be honest. 91, 88, so the contacts are much more usable. Has a 93 clutch, so just a better PCI than a guy like Brandon Lau. 113 power left, 115 power right, so he gives you the power that a guy like Lau gives you. And then, defensive liability. But that's kind of what you get when you have a 90 overall second baseman that has that type of power and that type of contact. He's not going to be able to fill it for you. Moving on, Goldschmidt. This is like a C tier card. If you really want to run him, you can. I think his swing is super slept on every year. I think a lot of people don't even give him a chance. And there's a good reason. Usually he doesn't get good cards for the most part. But absolutely mashes against lefties. 125, 120. The downsides of this card is he's not very good against righties, and his clutch doesn't really make up for that. And a good amount of his overall is probably weighted into defense at first base. So definitely a usable card. Not my first option or my second option or my third option or, probably my 18th option to play first base. But he is there, and I think you can definitely win games with a guy like him playing first for you. This Devers card, I'll be honest, I only have him on here because a lot of people are using the captain boost. Overall, I think this card's super mid. 81 against lefties, 91 against righties, 71 power left, 93 power right, 83 clutch. This is kind of what sinks the card, in my opinion. And then he's, either an average or a slightly below average fielder. But the swing's really good and the quirks are really good, so you can definitely use the card. More of an all-star card or to boost players on all-star. But you can definitely make him work on Hall of Fame. When I go through the list and look at like guys I play at third base, I would definitely like Duvall at third base over him. So I think that kind of solidifies his D tier. But we'll maybe revisit it in the future. Palmeiro, very similar to like Mark McGwire. Schwarber's probably definitely better than him, but very similar to a guy like McGwire, where the contacts aren't a great spot, but you're using them because you either like the swing or the power is just too good to pass up. 82, 83, 105, 104, 90 clutch, plus has the added benefit of having basically every hitting quirk you would want. And most people probably already have him super fractured if they are using him at this point. So I think he's comparable. If you want to drop him a tier, you can. But I think his swing's just kind of too good to do that. Richie Sexson, I believe this card's going to be very similar power-wise to all those others. So 86, 82, 115 against both sides, 92 to clutch. So basically the same hitting stats. Kind of has that Aaron Judge effect where if you're uncomfortable with really tall batters, you might not enjoy Richie Sexson, but I'm pretty sure McGwire's pretty tall and Palmeiro's pretty tall also. So your alternatives aren't too much better than that. Royce Lewis, S tier. This card's very good at the moment. When we get our next drop, he might get a little outdated, but 116 left, 90 right, 103, 115 with 103 clutch also, with being a decent fielder. You probably don't want to run him at shortstop because he's pretty slow, but at third, at second, very solid fielder, infield wides. Ryan Howard, I'm going to personally drop this card to B tier just because my personal bias. 72 against lefties, 90 against righties, 91 left, 125 right, 103 clutch. So the clutch kind of offsets the just terrible contact left. Oh, I'm going to drop him a C tier. If you have ever used Ryan Howard, he has one of the worst lefty swings in the game. It is so hard to turn on certain pitches with him. Just not my favorite at all. I think the clutch is kind of your argument. If you want to argue he's B tier, similar to like Gallo or Peterson, then you can. But I think what you're harping on a lot with that is the clutch being halfway decent. I would not be one of my first picks for first base. Tim Raines, I think he's just kind of C tier at this point. He's usable. You know, a lot of people don't know he can play second base. That's probably his most valuable position. But at this point of this season, I probably wouldn't be running a second baseman with 52 power against lefties and 66 against righties. He's fine. And if you really need that speedy like switch bat, or if you're running the Corbin Carroll team and you're on like a higher difficulty that you're not super comfortable on, definitely could be a reason to run him. But in general, I'd probably stay away from him at this point of the season. Trey Turner, still really like this card. I think he's aged very well. I think he's still very solid at maybe not shortstop, because at shortstop you're looking at 76 reaction and a bronze shield. Or no. Showzone's lying, right? That would be a silver shield. So he's fine defensively. He's nothing to write home about. Still has really bad power against righties, but the swing is super good. And I think if you're ranking him as a second baseman, he's very comparable to like Soriano and Polanco. But I think as a shortstop, he's just kind of in here with like Pena and Morel and like Mookie, where he's one of the better options, but probably not the best. This Mancini card, very similar to Adam Dunn, hitting wise, just kind of a righty. 86 left, 96 right, 103 left, 91 right with 88 clutch. So a solid card. I really like his swing a lot. He's very solid as far as a free card goes, but probably wouldn't be one of my first picks. Vinny Castilla, I feel like his time's kind of come and went. He's still fine if you want to run him at third base. I think the real value of this card is if you grind it out BR like day one of last season, or I guess it's this season, but like last drop. 110 left, 83 right, 101 left, 85 right with 93 clutch. Always a super slept on card. I feel like his swing's pretty solid most of the time. First pitch hitter, dead red, two relatively good quirks. I think he's fine. If you still want to run him, you can still run him. I don't think he's as bad as some of these guys, but would not be one of my first picks. Willie Castro, you can make the argument for S tier. For me, it's the power. It's kind of similar to like Trey. 125 left, 90 right, 105 left power-wise, and then 67 against righties power-wise. If you enjoyed that gold Willie Castro from earlier in the year, the BR Demon, this card's going to be right up your alley. This is just a better version of that card. Super solid card there. Wilson Contreras, I think he's fine as a catcher. I think I would probably prefer like Piazza over him. But 106 left, 95 right, 93 left, 75 right, 103 clutch is a much better defensive catcher than a guy like Piazza if you care about that. But hitting wise, just basically worse across the board. Also has kind of that weakness, that flaw of being really bad power wise against one side of the plate. Yandy Diaz goes in A tier, almost a perfect card. I don't always love his swing in game, but breaking ball hitter, unfazed, and bad ball hitter. So some halfway decent quirks on him. Not my favorite in the world, but 116 left, 100 right, 104 power left, 54 power right. That is the only problem with this card. Otherwise, you would be looking at first baseman that you could probably start up until the later points of the season. So the power kind of holds him back a little bit. But if you're on a higher, like I've been saying, if you're on a higher difficulty and you feel like you really need that huge PCI, you can deal with the 52 power. Assuming you play at a high elevation park, assuming you're hitting enough perfects, you can definitely play around with that 52 power, and it's not a death sentence. Gomer, I think this card's fine. It's whatever. He just kind of has bleh hitting stats for the most part. 88 left, 89 right, 83 left, 78 right with 91 clutch. So just all his hitting stats are in that like 90 to like mid 70s range. He's fine. If you want to use him, you can use him. Definitely not messing with a guy like Yasmani, though, who is probably the best catcher you can be using right now. Obviously, in the XP pass, so a lot of people haven't got him yet. A lot of people have somehow. I mean, I guess it's whatever. It just kind of depends on how much you play the game at this point. But 102 left, 110 right, 105 left, 115 right with 88 clutch. So reminds me a lot of the Team Affinity card. You saw top 50 guys using that Team Affinity card deep into season 1, probably when they shouldn't have been. So that tells you all you need to know about this card. You can run this card at catcher for the rest of the season if you really want to. Then we have another White Sox catcher here in Zach Collins. I kind of picked him to represent all of those like Team Affinity catchers, where I think he's probably the best of the bunch. 62 contact left, 88 against righties, 90 power left, 104 against righties with 84 clutch. So I think the clutch helps him a little bit. I'll probably drop him down. I'd probably rather use Yan Gomes. If you really like this Zach Collins, if you really put some parallels on him, or if you play on All-Star, definitely a usable card. If you're on one of those higher difficulties, you're probably either looking to platoon him, or he's not even really a viable option at all. So going through, I think for the most part, this has been fair and objective. I think you could maybe drop Elias Diaz if you want to. I'll put, sorry. I'll put Rafi up a tier, but I think for the most part, I'm happy with that. These are the infielders I would be using for the most part. Some of these guys in D tier are kind of questionable, like Toro, probably only use if you're using like the Devers boost, or if you're still hanging on to switch it and boost. Alebnis wouldn't touch. Santander, same, switch it or boost, or I probably wouldn't be using them. And then Lau, just a super budget card. But yeah, I will post this in the description if you guys want to review, revisit, go back over the list and not watch the whole video. But yeah, guys, till next time, peace.